and we're into game 4, which is the first game on day 2, Sunday morning at Beachhead after a fairly sort of civilized night, really. I think we're all getting kind of old and grown up. Had a very nice curry, went for a couple of pints in the brew pub out on the outskirts of town, and meandered back and had a decent night's sleep. So these chaps, we talked about it before, they're dressed in green and unusual colours, so those must be pretty decent at the front. You've got red shields for normal guys, the mixed shooters, and you can see some of the slightly Egyptian looking javelineers at the back, heavy infantry there. And these guys in this game, game 4 in the competition, after some very successful outings, are taking part in an Assyrian civil war. And here's the setup. You've got, surprisingly perhaps, you've got two very different Assyrian armies on a very much biblical open plain. There's a gentle hill here, there's a bit of rough ground here, another hill over there, a bit of rough ground, but what you can see here is something quite unusual. It's a Scythian ally, or Cimmerian possibly in this era. So you've got half a dozen elite light horse bow and a sort of quite pokey, I think, medium cavalryman, possibly heavy cavalryman who shoots as well. This Assyrian army's gone for 4 chariots. It's just maxed out, stuck them straight down the middle, bish bosh. A lot of the medium shooters on the end there. I think there's a kind of lurky old light camel mediocre there to kind of cause disruption to enemy mounted troops. And I think these are all mixed shooters actually. Those are the heavy infantry mixed shooters, medium infantry mixed shooters, and not too many cavalry. So how have I set up against that? My textbook deployment with the 2 chariots in the middle, first up, giving nothing away. The medium commander's gone over here with this rough terrain in mind. We weren't expecting that at all. But equally, a lot of archery, a lot of infantry, a lot of heavy cavalry here. There's a pretty decent chance of sweeping this off the table. But then I'm going to run into this end of the Assyrian army, which is going to be a bit trickier. Obviously, chariots being outnumbered 2 to 1 is not great. My chariots are there as a kind of rapier-like thing to pick holes in other armies, but 4 heavy chariots is a bit tough. That's going to mean my 2 elite heavy infantry who have been separated here, they're bracketing the bow, the mixed bow heavy infantry, are going to have quite a lot of work to do to try and get in the way and halt this charge and neutralize the excess chariots in some way. And then possibly my heavy infantry will just barrel into these medium ones and see if they can kind of tough it out in a battle of the not particularly combat friendly troops. But let's see how that all washes up, and let's look at that army in detail. So yeah, actually it is split slightly differently. The 4 chariots are in the middle, but they are split across 2 commands. So you've got one, as you see, the one on the right next to the Scythians, 2 mixed heavy infantry, 2 chariots, and 2 light horse bow. There's the Scythian, as I said, an elite heavy cavalry bow with an ordinary general included. 4 of the 6 Scythians are elite. They're probably in the front rank. The second rank can support their shooting. And then the big command with the strategist, 2 medium cavalry elite, bit vulnerable to shooting, but elite. The 2 heavy chariots, couple of slingers, 4 mixed medium foot, and the mediocre bowman. So obviously kind of like mine, but still very different, particularly with the Scythians. So what happens here is oh my God, look at Dave's shirt. Isn't that quite remarkable? Yeah, that's maybe we just need to divert here this podcast and just start talking about shirts, really. So I'm really kind of just driving forwards thinking these are a bit of a target. They're very much a target. I'm just going to have to deal with those anyway. So if this whole command sort of drifts, my kind of aim is if I can take on these 2 with these 2, neutralize them, just sort of keep those out in the game a little bit, and then get all this stuff into here where there's an opportunity for just the sheer weight of numbers, the density of my formation, the more hit points, and the better quality actually against these sort of pretty poor shooters, particularly at this end, for my heavy infantry just to push through and just do a bit of a wash here and start winning all along there. That's sort of in theory the plan. Over on the other side, that shirt still, maybe if I just zoom in a bit, keep it out of the way, but you can see all my javelin infantry are looking to occupy the terrain. These guys are actually pretty confident. Light horse are going to do nothing against them but bounce off. They just want to get into shooting range, get their rear rank shooting. I can't even really fit all the cavalry in because of this rough terrain, and my army's sort of drifting across, and my cavalry are here looking to put pressure on them, but still pretty cautious about these 2 heavy infantry shooters and the 2 chariots there as well. So over we go. They're still in the distance. We kept most of that out of the way. and my cavalry are looking to advance forwards and push them back. But as you can see, it looks like this has sort of drifted across. They've drifted across as well. Their medium infantry have moved into that rough terrain, and so they're actually trying to match up my chariots one for one and go into these mixed shooters. So there's a lot of my more squishy mixed shooters there. The elite heavy infantry are next butted up to the chariot. They can take on 3 chariots. This one's a problem. It's hitting softer stuff, but I still have a chance to chew up these medium cavalry and possibly bring in some overlaps. But fighting against this block 4 there, 2 there, those cavalry is maybe not really what I want to do. I want it to be over there ideally. So you can see the other army sort of drifted. I've almost got too many men here to push round and concentrate on these Scythians. They've not run away yet, but I am going to drive them off and cause a real problem for the end of the line here. They just really can't stand up against this much shooting. But looking at it, there's no hit markers there, so maybe my guys were shooting dud arrows this Sunday morning. What's gone on here? We've got the initial chariot face off. I've gone in, I put in an overlap here, they've got an overlap the other side. It's just really soaking up these chariots to start with in a bit of a lottery, really. See what's going to happen and try and delay these whilst the rest of my army comes through and starts to threaten these medium foot, possibly get these heavy infantry past this line, push these medium cavalry back. So engage them, try and engage the general, keep them all very, very busy, and see how that washes out. And unfortunately, it doesn't wash out very well at all. These teeny tiny horses immediately smash straight through my army. This one-on-one chariot charge is a bit of a disaster. Bosh, they're straight through, and this guy, the general's taken 2 hits as well. So in an evens fight, it very much was the day of the tiny little horses. They then started piling into the rest of my infantry. That's a pretty catastrophic 4-hit marker, 3-hit marker there as well. The elite heavy infantry are standing up, but they're now completely surrounded. They're just sort of an isolated pocket there, and you can see their heavy infantry didn't. So this, which I was hoping to kind of be a bit of a wash, I'm just losing decisively, which is not great, leaving a very big hole in the middle of my army. But as you can see, these guys are engaged, they're suffering, but that has still meant that the rest of my infantry have got into these medium cavalry and some of these squashy infantry. They're doing okay, battering the mediums, losing a bit there. My cavalry have got this close without suffering any shooting hits. These guys are sort of screening them, so there's still a chance of just running into these and running them over potentially as well with my cavalry. And if I can get a breakthrough here and push into it, that's still looking all okay. So over on the other side, where my army's kind of drifted apart, these Scythians are proving remarkably resilient to shooting. There's a few hit markers starting to appear, but they've just not been pushed back, and my infantry are now way out of the game. They're not really going to have time to get across and affect this, and particularly with my middle sort of falling apart, that's allowing these heavy spearmen to come forwards and threaten my cavalry. So instead of my cavalry driving through here and into the back of the army, the enemy are pushing straight through the middle and pushing outwards, whilst these guys just hang around longer than I'd really expected them to. So this is really not going according to plan at all. And look, there it goes. My sub-general's chariot's gone as well, and suddenly there's a vast kind of hole in the middle of my army with only a single slinger to defend it. And as expected, they turn out, they sort of start wheeling in and rolling up my heavy infantry there, turning out and putting a lot of pressure on my cavalry, who is still not driven away these Scythians. So boom, straight through the middle, proper blitzkrieg tactics from this army. And I've really got very little answer to these chariots. They're just destroying my infantry, even though their cavalry drop off. I piled into these medium foot, piled into them there, but they are hanging on. They're fighting remarkably well. They've not collapsed, while my middle has utterly collapsed in this battle. And you can just see the chariot wheels rolling, the spears, the arrows, as they just pile into the flanks of my men. We're just desperately trying to get into everything and see if there's anything we can kill before these things cause havoc, because we can do nothing to stop them now. They're just running free. And this, excuse me, this looks very much like the end game. You can see this massive gap where they've just come out here, straight through the middle, rolled up here, and I've just been forced into a very defensive thing, finally driving the Scythians away, but just not breaking through any of these guys when even maybe they should have fallen over before I start suffering huge casualties. And yet they just carry on rampaging through. I am finally knocking a few holes in the middle of infantry, but it's just too little, too late. The chariots have won, done their thing, rolled through the middle, rolled out, and finishing off the last few elements of my army, just really to destroy them, and bring them, even though they're tiny little geezers, bring them to a sort of crushing defeat. I've nearly pulled a few back here, but it's just not quite enough. Wiping out this flank, but that big hole in the middle is just still very, very tricky. And no idea what that little camel is. Yes, he looks like the little crappy camel. The general has actually joined the crappy camel to try and take down my my light cavalry there, and done so very, very successfully, which is a bit of a shame. Very, very brave thing for that general to do, but it has tipped the balance, and in probably what ended up a pretty closely fought game after this collapse, it's probably just tipped the balance and left that huge hole, which we talked about a lot, in the middle of my army. And that is the end of that game.